For the first 6 months of my sobriety, a lot of mornings I volunteered at the Salvation Army in the morning and helped make breakfast and serve it to people that are homeless or people that can't afford food. And that was a really humbling experience and amazing. And I highly recommend that for anybody. If you can find something like that, that's amazing.
It's time for the SHAIR Recovery Podcast, where we bring you amazing life-changing success stories from addicts and alcoholics all over the world who share their inspiring journey in recovery. And now, here's your host, O.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of TSP, the SHAIR Podcast. And today we have Rebecca Ronning joining us on the SHAIR Podcast. Now, Rebecca is 21 years old and recently celebrates 1 year clean. She began using heroin at age 17 and from that point on has been battling drug addiction. She came from a good family. Both of her parents have over 25 years clean and sober in recovery. She was a good student who started college at age 16 while simultaneously attending high school, a star athlete, and with 2 semesters left to complete her RN degree, Rebecca has to drop out to go into rehab. She was admitted to 5 inpatient treatment centers, 3 sober houses, fired from pretty much every job she had, and all before the age of 21. Her recovery is nothing short of a miracle. So join us now as Rebecca takes us through her story. But first, if you would like to know the best way to show your support for the SHAIR Podcast, here are a few ways you can help. First, go to www.theshairpodcast.com, and there you can sign up for our free newsletter, which will let you know every time a new episode of the SHAIR Podcast comes out. You can leave us a 5-star rating and review on iTunes or Stitcher Radio. If you would like to know other places that you can listen to the SHAIR Podcast, you can listen to us on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher Radio, iHeartRadio, and YouTube. If you would like to donate to the SHAIR Podcast, you can do so via PayPal, or you can support us on Patreon. We have a thriving Facebook group that grows daily and has massive participation. Again, it's a private group, so if you would like to discuss recovery, share your experience, strength, and hope, help others, or lean on others for support, be sure to join the Facebook private group. And all of this information can be found on the website. So go to the website, and there you will find all the information that you need to help support the show. So now a quick message from our sponsors, and on to the show. Sober Nation is the largest online recovery community and treatment resource center. They provide treatment resources to those struggling with addiction, as well as to the family members who are caught in the crossfire. On top of that, Sober Nation is a huge community of good people who share their experience with each other. They have informative content, recovery and addiction news, as well as an entire clothing line which helps expand the culture of recovery. They can easily be found at www.sobernation.com. Sober Nation is putting recovery on the map. And finally, would you like to receive the most popular AA daily devotions free in one distribution? Transitions Daily delivers daily devotions from the 24 hours a day, AA Thought for the Day, Daily Reflections, Big Book Quote, Just for Today, As Bill Sees It, plus more. You can get our distribution daily via email, private Facebook group, or Twitter. Go to dailyaaemails.com for more information. And don't forget to share dailyaaemails.com with friends in meetings and with sponsees in recovery. Now back to the show. Hey, Rebecca, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I'm super excited to have you on the show today. How are you feeling?
I feel awesome. How are you doing?
Doing excellent. Thank you for asking. So, folks, today we have Rebecca Ronning joining us on the SHAIR Podcast. Rebecca's 21 years old, has 1 year clean, and she is joining us today to share her experience, strength, and hope. So, Rebecca, are you ready to get started?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right, let's do this. So first of all, take us into your normal daily routine, including recovery.
So I work Monday through Friday, and so I wake up about 5:30 every morning and kind of get ready for the day, kind of bring some peace in my life before I go to work. And, then I work till about 3:30, 4 o'clock. And I try to hit up a meeting about like 3-4 times a week. It really depends on how I'm feeling that week. And I go for a walk every night. That's kind of like my meditation period. I feel like I have like these nice walking trails by my house. And so just kind of getting out in the nature really helps to calm me down after like a long day. And, you know, I meet with my sponsor every week, meet at the same time, same day, same place. Consistency is like what helps me get through the week. And I just really try to do like exercise during the week, especially on the weekends when I have off. And I like yoga, and just kind of like my life is pretty boring now, but like not in a bad way. It's pretty average, I feel like, compared to what it was.
Yes. Well, I'm sure as your story unfolds, everything right now seems a bit boring, you know, compared to the, you know, monstrous tragedies and wreckage that we caused in our past, right? You know, getting up on time, showing up to work, being accountable, being responsible. So, you know, life's a bit boring. But as the years go by, you start to realize that that's really what makes life so great, is that routine that you can count on. You know, you establish a foundation by working a good program, by having a sponsor, by working the steps, by going to meetings. And then your life starts to just unfold naturally. There's just this natural progression that happens. And then, yeah, for some people, the reason why we don't come in is because, oh, my life's going to be so boring. But there's so many doors that open for us once we get clean that, you know, it's anything but boring after a while.
Yeah, it's like my routine is just like very average, but it's like I shouldn't use the word boring. Like my dad just told me today, he said, my dad's sober too, and he's like, you know, I really didn't start living until I stopped drinking. I like that. So
how much time does your dad have?
Both my parents actually just celebrated 26 years sober.
Oh my God. Really?
Yeah. Yeah, I got to give my mom her 26-year coin.
Oh, wow.
So
that is just amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, definitely I can't wait to listen to your story then, because there's a lot of heartbreak there for your parents.
Yeah.
Having to watch them on the outside looking in. It's gotta be tough. It's gotta be tough. I got a 13-year-old daughter who is not showing any signs so far of being a rock star partier, you know. So, and every year that she, you know, has a birthday, you know, I thank my lucky stars that, okay, so far so good, right? But at any given moment, man, it's in her blood.
Yeah.
Nothing I can do.
That's for sure.
So you've already kind of covered how, you know, in your daily routine, you take your walk at night and that's how you meditate. Is there anything else that you do to maintain your spiritual condition, that conscious contact with a higher power?
Like on my way to work, I always keep like the car pretty quiet. And I just kind of like, that's when I like say my prayer for the day, just like however small it is. And I feel like I got more connected with my higher power by getting connected with other people to begin with. That's like how the connection first started. Mm-hmm. Because, like, at first I kind of thought, you know, that higher power stuff, like, that's cute. That's nice for you. But, like, I can do this on my own. Yeah. Like, I'm good. But now I really feel like it's crazy. I just feel this, like, really great connection. Like, I just notice these God moments now. And I feel like that's the coolest part of my recovery is, like, seeing, like, all these things that are happening in other people's lives too, not only myself, and just seeing all like how God comes into people's lives. My higher power is God. And, you know, that's just really cool and really amazing what recovery has brought me in that sense.
It's, for me, the key to this program is the spirituality of it. I, like you, like so many in the beginning, had such a bad taste in my mouth about religion. So I balled up God and religion all in the same concept. And once I separated God from religion, then I could embrace the concept of spirituality for the first time wholly in my life. And then, then things just started to snowball in a positive direction. As soon as I surrendered and I adopted that relationship with God, I too call my higher power God. And then, just things just started to happen, and I couldn't deny that there was a power greater than me working in my life. So there was no need for me to question anymore. It was just like, I got to go with this.
Yeah. It's just so beautiful.
I love it. Okay, so how much clean time do you have, and when is your anniversary date?
I have 13 months today, so my anniversary date was July 18th, 2015.
Awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's great. All right. And tell us how old you were the first time you drank or used drugs, and more importantly, how did they make you feel?
So I think the first time that I ever did anything, I was 12 and smoked weed for the first time with like a cousin. And, I really don't remember too much of that. But the first time I drank when I was probably 13, I remember it was with a bunch of girls, and I just remember throwing up like so much that night and the next day. And I'm like, for the next couple days, I'm like, oh, that was horrible. And then like after that, it was like texting them like, oh, when are we going to do that again? So yeah. So.
I can't tell you, I've interviewed, I don't know how many people, and I can't tell you how many have that same story,
I know.
Throwing up, spinning, sick. 2 days later, dude, we got to do this again.
Yeah.
That was so much fun.
Exactly.
All right, Rebecca, you are all warmed up. So now it's time for me to turn the show over to you. It's time for you to share your story, the battle against drugs and alcohol, the wreckage it caused in your life, when you hit rock bottom, and finally your journey into recovery up until today. So Rebecca, take it away.
Okay. Well, first I'll start with that I grew up in a small town in northern Minnesota. It's about 3,600 people. And
Jesus.
Yeah.
Small.
So, yeah, it was very small. And so everybody knows everybody in that town, and it can be a good thing or a bad thing. For me, it was a bad thing. And, I had a really good childhood. Like I said, my parents have been sober my whole life. So I've never seen them use or anything like that before. And they were always really honest with me about alcoholism and about addiction and stuff as much as I wanted to know. I didn't really give a shit at the time, to be honest. But it came in handy, obviously, as my journey has progressed, and my parents have been a huge support system, and it's been amazing. But just at the time, it was just when I first started drinking, it was, my parents didn't have liquor around the house. I'm just like, that really sucks. I can't go into their liquor cabinet, So that's the way I saw it. But yeah, like I said, my childhood, I think it had its normal ups and downs, but it was really good. And I was really involved in high school with swimming and diving. My mom was my diving coach, so I was really into that for most of the year. So that really took up a lot of my time and kind of kept me out of trouble. So when I was a junior in high school, I actually I tested out so that I could do college early. So my junior and senior year of high school, I went to college full time. I actually graduated with my Associates of Arts degree at the same time that I graduated high school. So that was really cool that my school did that. And like I said, I was really involved in diving. I went to state a few years in that. And so everybody in my family and stuff, they just all expected me to succeed so hard.
Yeah,
and
of course.
put me like on this pedestal kind of thing. So they expected me to go to college and dive in college. Then when I was in high school, like my senior year, I moved out of my parents' house and moved into my boyfriend's house in Duluth. And then from there, I started drinking more, and that's when I started doing drugs more. I mean, I think I tried shrooms and like all kinds of stuff by the age of 16. Then, you know, just from there, it just like progressed with living like with my boyfriend, and he lived with like 4 other college guys. And so they're all into partying. And
you were living in a house with 4 other guys?
Yeah, it was gross.
Oh my God.
It was so gross.
Were they older than you?
Yeah, they were older than me.
How much older?
Well, my boyfriend was 3 years older than me, so they were around the same age.
Oh, sounds horrific.
Yeah, it was horrible. So when I was 17, I got my own apartment, and then broke up with that boyfriend, got a new boyfriend, and drank a lot with him. That was kind of like when I started drinking every day. And I didn't notice like any kind of problem with it until like I spent the night at my friend's house, and I guess the next day was Thanksgiving, and I was like drinking at like 8 a.m. and
Nice.
They're like, "What the hell are you doing?" And I'm like, "Drinking." Like, what is the problem? They're like, "It's Thanksgiving. Aren't you going with your family soon?" Like, just like, yeah, like whatever kind of thing. Then I started going to raves a lot too. And, you know, that was just pretty much, I noticed, like, I thought it was because of music that I loved raves, but really it was just the drugs, because ever since I got sober, I don't like any of that kind of music. Like, that music sounds horrible. The rave kind of music sounds horrible if you aren't on drugs.
Correct. That's, correct.
And so I was just going to these raves every weekend. And I also got diagnosed with a seizure disorder when I was 15. So I remember 2 different occasions where I was at rave and did too many drugs and like had a seizure. And
well, like epileptic seizure?
Yeah, like I get grand mal seizures.
Oh,
and
dude.
Yeah, so I haven't gotten one in a few years, but definitely like if there's like things like around me that like help cause it kind of, then it's like more prone to happen, like lights and drugs and all the stuff that you find at raves. So when I was 17, that was the summer before I went into college again. And my boyfriend at the time, he was like smoking something on tinfoil around me. And I'm like, what's that?
Yeah, exactly.
Like at that point, I had like prided myself on how I had never done heroin. But, you know, when it was offered to me, it was like, sure, okay. So then I tried heroin for the first time with him. And we started doing it more regular. And then it was just realizing that, like, I didn't know anything about heroin when I first tried it. I didn't know it made you sick if you didn't do it. I didn't know, like, anything about it. I just figured if I wasn't shooting it up, what's the problem?
Right.
So then, like, the whole, like, alcohol and every other kind of drug just went to the wayside because I had found what I was looking for. Like, I had found what I like. So I was doing heroin and living with this boyfriend, and I still started nursing school that semester. I still finished it somehow that semester. And then this went on for about a year. And, you know, my parents would question me for a while, like, where's all your money going and things of that nature, but they never exactly knew what was going on.
Now that blows my mind, because as you're talking, I'm thinking about this and I'm going, all these years, and you gotta suspect that you're doing something beyond, just, smoking weed.
Yeah. Well, my parents knew I liked to drink and like I liked to do other drugs and stuff. But I think they just, like, when I finally admitted to my mom that, like, yeah, it is heroin I've been doing, she was like, that makes total sense. Like, I figured you're doing pills or something. I didn't know. And, they came from a really non-judgmental standby on it. So, yeah, that's when I was working like 3 jobs at the time and lost every single one of them. And
it's amazing that you were managed to have 3 jobs at any given point when you were doing heroin.
I know it is. And it was, but that's like what helped me so that I made enough money that I didn't have to try and borrow money from my parents at that point, because it got a lot worse later on. Then, I finally got sick of it. And like, I called my mom. I'm like, hey, I've been doing drugs, but there's this medication I know of, Suboxone, that you can get, that I want to get this prescription and then it'll help me get off drugs. And like, I just thought that I would take Suboxone and then like all my problems would be gone. Yep. And like, I would be fine. Cause I did not want to go to treatment. That was like the last thing I wanted to do. So my mom agreed and we made like a 3-hour drive to go down to Minneapolis to get this. And it was super sketchy. Like, you pay like this doctor cash and you get like as much as you want. It's weird, but super not legit. But everybody I knew got their Suboxone from there. And so I started taking Suboxone and, I stayed off heroin for a few months, surprisingly. I'm surprised it even lasts that long. At this point, then I started an outpatient finally. Then in outpatient, I met a guy that did heroin that was still using heroin. So then at that point is when I started IV using heroin. Ugh. And that's when like everything went like a million times worse. I didn't know things could, like, I didn't know that was going to cause it. I didn't know anything about what I was doing, to be honest. At this time, I'm like 18. So I start injecting heroin with this guy. And I think at that time, like, I had an apartment and my parents were paying my rent because I couldn't keep up on it. Lost another job waitressing. And, it just turned into this cycle of me pawning, like, anything I owned. I would pawn things and go back for them sometimes. Then most of the time I wouldn't. Then, it was a really bad cycle like that for probably about 6 months. And then I finally decided like that I was going to go to inpatient. And so I was waiting to get into inpatient. And I told my mom, I'm like, the only way I'll go to inpatient if it's somewhere where I can smoke and if I can have my Adderall prescription there, because I need that to live.
So you were on Adderall all this time too?
Yeah.
Which is super addictive as well.
Yes, yeah. And so, and no, the treatment center I went to did not allow me to do either things. And right before I went into treatment, I was driving my car and I had just gotten high right before I was driving. So I passed out at the wheel and ran into a sign. So that was the first time that I'd overdosed, and luckily somebody drove by and stopped and called an ambulance. And I was giving Narcan, which is like an opiate reversal. So if you overdose and you're given Narcan, it kind of like reverses the effects of the opiates. So then I'm like, I was on the wait list to get into treatment, I think, at that point. So I got into treatment a few days after that. And this was my first time in inpatient. So, of course, after like 5 hours, I'm like, I'm leaving, whatever, like, fuck this place. And then after a few days, I calmed down and I stayed the full like 28 days. But, you know, the whole time, like, I thought, like, oh, well, you know, maybe I can drink and stuff when I get out. Like, you know, I at least like the basics of recovery were like put into my head and everything. Afterwards, they like recommend that I should go to a halfway house. So instead, I just went back to my hometown. I went back to living with my parents. And I think it was like 3 hours after I got out of treatment, I was high again.
Oh my
and
God.
And it was only 3 hours because that's how long it took to get home.
Oh my God.
So it wasn't even like a contemplation thing. It was like, I'm getting high. And it was kind of like almost to prove like I'm not a drug addict. Like it's crazy as that sounds, but like it makes sense. Like if you're a drug addict.
In the weirdest, sickest sense possible, it just did.
Yeah, exactly. Like if I said that to a normal person, they'd be like, what the hell?
Lock her back up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so then at that point, I mean, my parents found out soon after that I was getting high, and they were really pushovers with it, to be honest. They really like didn't want to believe I was using. Like then I thought the best thing to do would be to enroll back in college because I thought that was going to keep me sober somehow. So I continued on to a next semester of nursing school, which I was getting high like the whole time I was in nursing school. And it was just like really bad again. You know, you just pick up where you left off, and that's super true. Yeah. I didn't even know it could get worse. Like, it always gets worse. But, you know, I would always tell myself, like, well, you know, at least I haven't done this yet, or I haven't done that yet. And, like, it would always be, like, a yet, though, because everything that I thought I wasn't going to do, I did. In order so I could stay high and avoid the sickness. Because, like, opiate withdrawal to me is just like death. Like, it's the worst feeling ever. So it was just crushing my parents. Like, and the saddest part about it is, like, it really, really crushed my mom at first. She was crying all the time. And then probably, like, my last year of using, she, like, never got upset about it. And, like, when I was in an argument with her and I like called her like, Mom, you're such an unemotional bitch. And she was like, well, you wouldn't have any emotions either if you thought your daughter was going to die every day. And that like just like broke my heart. There's not many things that affected me when I was using, but that definitely did. And then I think probably a few months after I got out of that treatment, my cousin died of a heroin overdose. And,
oh, man.
Yeah, she was and so at that point I was 19 and she was the same age as me. She was 19. And I wasn't very close to her, but like my parents were just so traumatized by it because they're just like, you know, that could have been you. Like, this is, you know, this is horrible. Like, what are you doing to your life kind of thing. But, like, I didn't care. I didn't care at all. And along with using drugs, it just came with using guys, like, using anybody I could to get more money, to get what I needed so that I would be okay. And really, like, then I started getting a sugar daddy at that point. And I'm about 5'1", and I weighed probably like 90 pounds. It was really,
my God.
It was really rough. Then I started going to the hospital a lot because like I like end up in the hospitals like with kidney infections while I'm using. And so I went to the hospital a few times for kidney infections. And then actually I ended up getting bacterial meningitis. And if you don't know, that's like a brain infection. So I had to be in the hospital for 7 days, and that was really rough. And because I was still using at that time, and I just remember, like, I didn't know if it had anything to do with my using as to why I got it, but I think it compromised my immune system on some part.
Yeah, Jesus. So now, while all this is going on, right? Because you mentioned the sugar daddy, right? Mm-hmm. So were you living with him?
I was living at like a bunch of different people's houses. Like I had a different boyfriend. So I was living at a boyfriend's house, but I was also staying with my sugar daddy sometimes. I was at my parents' house. Like I was just kind of like
so you would just pop in and out, using drugs, using people, scheming, hustling, jiving in the hospitals. Yeah. It's just this crazy cycle.
Yeah, that's exactly how it was. It was horrible. Like, and I certainly like wasn't happy, but as long as I was high, like I didn't really care. And that's what I realized at like, probably after my third overdose was like, I realized like, I don't care. I'm not scared of dying, but I'm scared of living.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Like I wasn't scared of dying at that point at all. Then, this was something that I feel the worst about this is I stole my mom's jewelry, like including my grandma's wedding ring and who she passed away, and I pawned it. Probably got like $40 for it.
Oh, dude.
But my mom ended up getting it back.
Nice.
So that was good. But it was just like, oh my God. Yeah. Like that means the world to her. And that's just like, it's like so crazy because if people like the people that knew me before I was using, like I wanted to be a nurse. Like I really care about people. I care about like helping people. That was just always kind of my lifelong goals is to make a difference and stuff. And then I end up being like this heroin addict junkie who steals from people and uses people and sleeps with guys for money. Like, nobody would have guessed that. So, I think I was 20 the second time I went into inpatient, and that time was better. I felt like I did really want to get sober more, but 30 days sometimes is not long enough for a heroin addict. I think, at least like for me, it wasn't always long enough. So then after treatment, I did go to a sober house this time, and I lasted 2 days there. And I was in a co-ed sober house, so there was guys in the sober house living there too, which was like, and so then I'm waiting at the bus stop for a bus, and this Puerto Rican guy that lives in the sober house too is like, hey, you want to get high? I'm like, sure. Yeah. Like, it's like, I didn't even think about it. Like, I didn't think anything. So then immediately I'm just doing speedballs again and like just doing like whatever. And then I get kicked out of this sober house, and I'm like in Minneapolis, which is like 3.5 hours from where my parents live. And I'm homeless. Like they kick me out at like 10:30 at night, and like I'm walking the streets of like Minneapolis, like doing whatever, just like smoking crack with random people and like,
dude,
not even knowing what I'm doing. I'm in such an oblivion that I didn't know what was going on or anything. And finally I got some sense to call my cousin who lives down by here, and he picked me up and stayed there. And then I went to his house that night, and then my dad came down and picked me up the next day. And on our way back, I convinced my dad to drop me off with this guy who I told him I was going to a meeting with.
Dude.
And it was a drug dealer. So, like, my dad drops me off with him. So I go do my thing for, like, the next, like, 3 or 4 days and end up having the worst overdose that I have had. And I get carried out of this apartment building and left on the sidewalk, and somebody called 911. So I don't remember any of this, but, like, the EMTs got there and they gave me, like, CPR and gave me, like, 2 shots of Narcan. I woke up in the hospital. Just immediately, I was just pissed. I'm like, where's my dope? Like, you know, that is the first thing I think.
Yep.
Like, I don't think about, like, anything else. So it's just a cycle of, it went on like that. You know, at this point, I'm 20, and it went on like that. So in total, I went to 5 inpatients. And after my 4th inpatient, I stayed sober for 3 months in a halfway house. And I had a boyfriend at that time who I met in treatment.
Dude.
And so then I'm like, oh, it's a great idea. I should just move out of my halfway house and we should just move in together.
Mm-hmm.
We're 2 heroin addicts, like, few months sober. Like, we got this. And,
Sick.
yeah.
Sick.
Like, I don't even know where my I just don't even think. Like, I swear, that was, like, I just needed somebody. Like, the last time I went through treatment and everything, like, I just did whatever anybody told me to do. I didn't rely on my thinking for probably the first, like, 8 months of my sobriety. Like, just anything anybody would tell me to do. Okay. Do 90 meetings in 90 days? Okay. Like, you know, just, like, whatever they would tell me to do. And so me and this guy move in together. And of course, after like a week of living there, I'm like, I could probably drink. So I go and drink with a friend. And the next day I'm showing up heroin crack. And so then the next few months are the same thing. In and out of hospitals. I think I even went to detox that time. And like just horrible. And actually, also in 2014, so a year before this, I had passed out in my car at like 2 a.m. after like getting high, and somebody called the police. And at that point, I got taken to a hospital. And then 6 months after that, I got charged with a felony 5th degree possession because they found like an empty bag with residue in my car, and a DUI. So the last year of my using, I was also on probation.
Good
and
Lord.
Yeah, and I never got busted, thank God. And, you know, it was a really rough time. So at this point, I'm living down in Minneapolis with my boyfriend, like I said, and we're using. And so then I decided to go to treatment May of 2015. And I went to treatment, and I didn't know it was going to be in the middle of like nowhere. And like it was a bunch of women that just got out of jail, and I was too good for that treatment. Was what I thought.
So delusional. So delusional.
I know. But I was straight up with the counselor, at least. Like, I'm like, my boyfriend's picking me up. I'm going to get high. Like, I'm not ready to get sober. And, like, I was straight up with her. Like, I wasn't going to do this, like, bullshit of, like, oh, well, I'm going to go get sober on my own now. Like, this has been great. Like, thanks kind of thing.
Yeah.
I was just pretty straightforward. And I left that treatment center, went and got high for a few more months. And then July of 2015, this was my 21st birthday, was on the 8th. So we went out and celebrated, and I don't remember much of anything. But a few days after that, I was living at my parents' house again, and my boyfriend was living there. The one that I'd met in treatment was living there with me at my parents' house. And
oh my God.
I know.
Seriously. Gotta have to talk with your parents. I gotta talk to your parents. What the fuck? Seriously.
I know.
How old were you at this time?
21. I just turned 21.
Yeah, you're right. Jesus Christ. Like, oh my God.
So it kept being like I kept living in apartments and then moving back with my parents for a few months and then moving out. And,
Jesus.
Like, it was just a cycle. And I'm actually still with that boyfriend today. And
no.
Really? Yeah, we used together for about 5 months. And I got sober a few months before him. Then he's been sober for about almost a year now. I think it'll be a year next month.
Oh,
so
wow. That is hard to believe. That's harder to believe than the rest of the story.
I know. And we actually have a really good relationship. And, like, it's really healthy, which is really weird for me. But, like I was saying, July 2015 was right when one morning I got high that morning, and then I passed out on my floor or something, and, like, woke back up and just felt this immense pain. And I didn't even know where I was, like, so, like, in pain that I couldn't even tell, like, where it was coming from in my body. And so I just ran downstairs. I'm like, Dad, I need to go to the hospital right now. So he, like, took me to the hospital. Then I, like, found on my arm that, like, I had this huge, like, bulging out spot. And, like, it was from, like, IV use, but I didn't really know what it was. And they just, like, gave me some antibiotics and sent me home.
Uh-huh.
And so then I went home, and then my mom took my temperature a few hours later, and it was 105 degrees. And so then I went back to the hospital, and they rushed me to a different hospital. And it turned out that I had a blood infection, and it was from IV use. And also, like, my kidneys were, like, shutting down from it. So they kept me in the hospital for about 6 days. And, I mean, I was really sick, but still at that time, I still had somebody bring me in heroin to the hospital once, for sure. But then, by the time I got out of the hospital, I'm like, Dad, I'm ready. I need to go to treatment. Like, I need to get this shit under control. Like, because by that time, I had 4 overdoses. I just had blood infection, which almost went to my heart. And my kidneys were all messed up. I was so underweight. And I had this felony charge. And, like, it was just like, what the hell is going on with my life?
Seriously.
Thinking of, like, where I was at when I left high school, like, I thought I had this great future ahead of me and stuff. And, really, if it wasn't heroin, it would have been something else. So it would have been alcohol, it would have been cocaine, it would have been anything. So I never blamed anybody. Like, it was that's just what happened is, like, I'm just a drug addict and I have these tendencies. So, then a couple days later, I get back into treatment for the 5th time. And so luckily my insurance pays 100% for all these treatments, or I would have been so screwed.
Totally.
Treatment was really great. Like, it just was really, like, I felt like I could breathe again. And I felt like, I had a chance at fighting this thing. And, it was just, like, I had some really great counselors there and stuff. And so after that, I moved into a sober house, and it was recommended that I live there for 6 months. So I lived there for 10 months. And like I said, I did 90 meetings in 90 days. And, things weren't like things like didn't just go amazing when I got sober. It wasn't like, I didn't have that,
pink cloud.
That pink cloud kind of thing anymore. Like, I had that before, but this time I got sober and I got pissed. Like, I was just pissed. Like, I didn't want nothing to do with anybody. And so, but like, I worked through that. I went to therapy every week for 9 months.
But what were you so pissed off about?
I don't even know. To be honest, I was pissed that I was an addict. I was pissed that, like,
mad at the world kind of a thing.
Yeah, like,
I got you. Uh-huh.
It was nothing at anybody specific. But, like, I still did what everybody told me to do. Like, I was still doing everything that I was supposed to do. But, when I got out of treatment this time, like, my parents were like, we are not paying for you to go to another sober house. Like, no. And I didn't have any money, of course. So my dad had to start, like, a GoFundMe page. So in order for me to go to a sober house. And luckily, in that sense, I do come from a small community, because that everybody does know me, and everybody knew I was a drug addict before I knew I was a drug addict. So it wasn't a surprise to anybody. So they're all willing to help. And my dad raised like $5,000. And
holy cow.
Yeah.
Your parents are saints.
I know they are.
Oh my God. I love them.
I know. And then because of that, I was able to move into a sober house. But I mean, like, I still had to live off food stamps for like 4 months while I like was doing full-time like treatment and stuff for the first month. And then I started getting a job. My first sober job was at Caribou Coffee, and because somebody told me to get a job at a coffee shop, so I got a job at a coffee shop. I just did anything anybody told me to do. It really got a lot better. Like, as I stayed sober, like, I created these great relationships, and, like, St. Paul, Minnesota actually has a really tight young people's sober community. We have, like, over 700 meetings a week here. So it's been really great to meet people, and all my friends today are in recovery, and they're all super great. And, somebody told me to make friends with a bunch of women, and so all my friends are women, and that really helped me. I was really scared of women when I first got sober, and before that, and I was really scared to get sober at a young age too. I was 21. I just had my 22nd birthday. So, just like, I was scared that I was going to be bored and that, like, my life was over, especially, like, with heroin. I was really addicted to the chaos that came with it every day. And so it's been really amazing to realize that, hey, like, I can just, like, sit with myself and it's okay. Like, I can just be at peace. So that boy that I talked about being in treatment, that I'm still dating 2 years later, Yeah, I know it's so weird. But we found out in June that I'm pregnant.
No way.
So,
really?
Yeah.
You're pregnant right now.
Yeah.
Congratulations. How exciting.
Thank you. Yeah. So our families are like really excited about it, and we're really excited, and it's just really cool, like what recovery has brought me, because, you know, when my cousin died from heroin, like I told you, she's the same age as me, and she had a 1-year-old baby. And just for the longest time, I thought, like, why did God take my cousin who has a baby? Like, she's a mother. Like, she should be here, like, not me, kind of thing. Like a survivor's guilt almost. And, you know, really I realized that maybe, like, I'm here because, like, I'm supposed to have a family. Like, I'm supposed to have a life. Like, you know, I'm supposed to do things. Actually, next week, too, I start back at school, and I have 2 years left for my bachelor's degree, and I switched degrees, so I'm going to be a licensed drug and alcohol counselor. So, yeah.
How does that not even remotely surprise me? That another miracle.
I know. I've had so many this past year. It's been amazing, and my life is truly a miracle, and everybody that's in my life is a miracle. And, you know, just like for anybody young that listens to your podcast, it's totally possible to get sober young and be happy. My parents were 25 when they got sober, and I was 21, and it's a really good life. And like my dad says, he didn't start living until he stopped drinking, and I just love that so much. And I think that's so true for me too. And so I think that's my story.
Oh my God. That is, I'm exhausted.
I know. I'm exhausted.
Wow. It is such a roller coaster ride. It's a miracle that you're not in jail. It's a miracle that you're not dead. It's a miracle that you don't have some sort of chronic illness that you're battling right now, that through all the wreckage and devastation, that there's no question that God has a plan for you. I mean, that is very clear, that when you come through something so horrific and on the other side, you find this completely different person. You just resurface a different person. Of course, without a relationship with a higher power, without the program, it's impossible. That's my philosophy. That's where I give credit to. I'm alive today. I'm on this podcast with you only by the grace of God, and only because I chose to follow this program and take suggestions to the letter, just like you did. You told me to do something. Yeah. I did it. You know, my first 5 years were about, yes, sir. And that was it. That was it. Because if I started thinking on my own, then I was going to end up in jail, or I was going to end up shot, or I was going to end up, you know, overdosing. And, you know, I couldn't do it. And what a beautiful gift that you have now. Not only are you about to have a baby, which is like a miracle all in of itself, but, you know, your parents were sober when they had you.
Yeah.
Clean and sober when they had you. And I'm sure that they didn't envision 18 years later, right, having to deal with the shit you put them through, right?
I know.
And the whole time you're telling your story, I'm thinking, I want to talk to her parents. You know, I want to know what the fuck was going on over there, because, you know, they must have just been dying.
Oh, my parents were in the worst. Like, that was one of the reasons why I was so angry. Like you were saying, like you're being angry at yourself. Like, I was so angry at myself for everything I'd done to them.
There you go.
Like, oh God, they've been through so much with me.
Yes. Yeah. That's exactly what it is. You're mad at yourself. You're just pissed off, and you have nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. You can't jump into a bottle. You can't bang a bag of dope. You have to literally just sit there and stew in this. Right? And if you don't have a program to lean on, it will eat you alive. The guilt, the shame, and remorse will eventually take you back out.
Yeah, exactly. And, just like the relationship I have with my parents today, it's so amazing. We talk every day. They're a huge part of my life. And it's so great to rebuild that relationship with them.
Oh, I can only imagine. They have to be so grateful that you found your way.
Yeah. Yeah. My dad was really happy I was doing this podcast tonight, too. He's like, I just think that's so great. You're going to inspire so many young people.
It's true. And on top of that, I still can't believe that you're still with your boyfriend that you met.
I know.
That is, holy moly. The odds of that even remotely working out are like probably 0.5%.
I know. I don't usually like to tell people where we met. So I don't want them to judge me.
I know. Yeah, seriously, for some people, that's one of those things where you're going to have to probably keep your anonymity. Oh, wow. How'd you guys meet? Well, it started in rehab.
I know we usually don't say that when we meet new people. We're just like, oh, yeah, we met at wherever.
Pick something that was happening in there at a barbecue. I don't know.
Yeah.
I just need to be rigorously honest with myself. I don't need to be rigorously honest with anybody else. But,
I know.
Anyway, Rebecca, you have such a beautiful story. You tell it so well. And there's no question that God has a big plan for you, because being so young in recovery and being able to embrace it and run with it the way you're doing right now is a testament to this program, and it's a testament to having a relationship with a higher power. So I salute you.
Thank you.
All right. So listen, let's start winding down. And the way I start to close down is I'm going to ask you some questions. So I'm going to ask you 5 questions about your early recovery, and I want you to respond with insightful and inspiring answers that you can share with our newcomers. Are you ready?
Yep.
All right, let's do this. So, Rebecca, number 1, what was keeping you from getting clean or staying clean when you first got introduced to recovery?
I think really what kept me from getting clean was just being sick. Being dope sick from heroin. But what kept me from staying clean was my arrogance. I thought I could outsmart the program or something or treatment. And I told my therapist this a couple months ago that I'm like, the promises have started coming true in my life. And my first reaction is I'm kind of pissed about it, because that means it does work.
Foiled again.
Pretty much. That's what I felt like.
The ego, man. The ego is not my amigo. It is just
exactly.
It's a beast. It talks to you in your own voice. We got this. We don't need this. Look at these losers in here. Meanwhile, one look in the mirror and it's like, whoa. Okay. So I can relate.
Yeah.
We all get it. We all get it. Okay. So number 2, at what point did you have that first spiritual awakening, that aha moment in recovery when you accepted that you were powerless over drugs and alcohol, but for the first time had developed the hope that you could recover?
I think that I found hope in hearing other people share their story. When I was in treatment, seeing people that came back and told their story, really made me feel like I could stay sober, and felt like, if these people can do it, I can probably do it too. So that was really what got to me and helped me, encourage me. And just the people in the program have just always encouraged me and told me the truth. And even when it meant that I was wrong, which God forbid that I'm wrong. And So I feel like, I was never really like, oh my gosh, that is like the moment. But it was just so many different moments in the beginning of my journey that just all collided to one that like, we got this, like, and it's always, we. So
I couldn't agree with you more. For people that have reservations about going to meetings, they resist going to meetings because there's so many reasons, but ultimately it boils down to ego. And the ego's telling you, we don't need meetings. We don't need to be around these people. But the thing is that the minute that you allow yourself just to listen, just for a minute, and you allow, the sunlight of the spirit to shine, right? Just in that moment, these meetings, people start sharing, and it's just literally the voice of God talking to you. All it takes is for you to just be open, just for a little while, and it just comes in. And these spiritual awakenings, these aha moments, they just start to pop up all around you, but you just gotta surrender just for a minute, and it'll start. Yeah,
exactly. Like I just had this wall built up like all around me, like, try to get in kind of thing. And once I started dropping that wall and listening to people and trusting people, it just made my perspective on the program just so much different. And I started like hearing what I needed to hear from meetings.
Yes, absolutely. Just, you got to bring the walls down, and literally, again, you have to just turn it over. And I know for many, any of that terminology is already going to turn them off. Turn it over.
Yeah.
Just allow the sunshine of the spirit. Why don't you take that sunshine and because you're so pissed. Like you were saying, you were angry. Yeah. You didn't even know why you were so angry, but you were just,
I know.
And the reality is that most of the time we're just so mad at ourselves, and it's so difficult to take responsibility for our own actions. We want to rage. We want to blame others. We don't want to take responsibility. So we shut people out. We put this wall around us. We're not going to let it in. I'm not going to hear this. And it's so important for someone, the beautiful part of your message is, well, so much of it, but more importantly, how young you are. And, I've had the privilege to interview quite a few people that were in their 20s when they got clean, and they have the most amazing lives. I have another couple that I interviewed, their husband and wife now, but guess where they met? Rehab. And they've been married now for, it's got to be over 5 years. Strong.
That's awesome.
Strong. Oh yeah. No, it's over 5 years strong. Cause I know they both, gosh, I got to recheck that, but no, they're going strong. I got them on Facebook, so I see them, with all their travels and everything. And that's another very cool thing too, that, the Facebook community and being able to watch people live their lives, and you're looking there and, it's not bullshit. People aren't just saying, oh, I have this great life, and you're just a miserable, Scrooge, right? You really do have these amazing lives that most people, or, people that prior to finding recovery would deem boring. And it's just, it's the furthest thing, I'm pretty happy with my boring life. So tell us, Rebecca, do you have a favorite book that you would recommend to a newcomer that you read in early recovery or currently?
I read the book Velvet Elvis in Treatment, and that's by Rob Bell. That's a really good one. That really helped me get connected with higher power.
Nice.
So that was really important. And
I love that
That's
name.
the one that comes to my mind.
I love that one. Velvet Elvis.
Yeah.
That's a great, I got the picture, I can picture now, those old velvet paintings. They're so horrific, but this is a brand new book for the roster. So I love it anytime somebody brings in a new one. And of course, something in reference to the higher power is always such a people need to be able to embrace that. It's so invaluable, that relationship with a higher power. So Velvet Elvis, guys, it'll be on the show notes. And number 4, what is the best suggestion you have ever received?
Service work will save your life. I for the first 6 months of my sobriety, a lot of mornings I volunteered at the Salvation Army in the morning and helped make breakfast and serve it to people that are homeless or people that can't afford food. And that was a really humbling experience and amazing. And I highly recommend that for anybody. If you can find something like that, that's amazing.
Anybody. Yes.
Yeah.
Service of any kind, whether it be in the rooms or it be in a soup kitchen or it be at an orphanage, when you are doing something that doesn't benefit you in any way, shape, or form, where you are doing selfless work, service work, it's the most rewarding and gratifying experience of your life. Giving freely is like alchemy, right? It just brings so much abundance into your life.
Mm-hmm. It's so important.
And finally, number 5, if you could give a newcomer only one suggestion, what would it be?
Do what other people tell you to do. Do anything anybody tells you to do. That was seriously the most important thing I could have done for myself is get my own self out of the way. A counselor used to always tell me that you gotta get out of your own way, and it was so true. I had to just trust in other people that I don't always know what the hell I'm doing.
Man, that is absolutely beautiful. For those of you that are listening, these are gold. This is gold right here. Beautiful newcomer suggestions. This is exactly what you need to do. You absolutely just need to stop thinking. Just take the cotton out of your ears and stick it in your mouth. Shut up and listen. I couldn't agree more. These are great suggestions, Rebecca. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a roller coaster ride, but I loved every minute of it.
Yeah, it's been pretty fun.
All right, folks, we have now reached the end of our show. Thanks for joining us. And as we say here in Costa Rica, pura vida.
Pura vida.
Thank you for joining us on the SHAIR Recovery Podcast. To check out the show notes page on this interview or to thank our guests for sharing their story, go to www.theshairpodcast.com. While you're on the website, don't forget to sign up for our free newsletter to stay up to date on the latest news, podcasts, and interviews. Want to be one of our guests and share your story? Then go to our website and click on the Share Your Story button. We share our inspiring recovery stories every Tuesday, so subscribe to our show on iTunes or Stitcher Radio to get your free weekly download. We'll see you then. The opinions shared on this show reflect those of the individual speaker and not of any 12-Step Fellowship as a whole. And though we discuss 12